Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another chat. I'm joined today by Martin Boreth, IBM Distinguished Engineer and the Technical Director for IBM Security in the UK and Ireland. And he's worked in cybersecurity industry for the last 24 years. Martin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Delighted to be here.
There's a lot of questions that I want to ask, but we've only got three. And these are three sort of big questions. So I'll jump straight in. And I guess the first one is a very big question, is that what are the current threats that you've seen, organizations facing?
Yeah, that's a great question to start. We continue to see the threat landscape evolve as perhaps we would expect. And I draw a lot of my insight from our X-Force research team. Every year they publish a report, the X-Force Threat Intelligence Index. Published that recently, looking back at the whole of 2022 and all the things we're seeing globally in different industries and different sectors. And I think, what's notable is, ransomware still continues to be ever present, but actually it's declining slightly, which is interesting, in favor of deployment of backdoors. So I think there's a little shift there, not just about ransomware and extortion. Extortion was around 27% of all the attacks we saw. So that's pretty prevalent. But this deployment of backdoors such that attackers and adversaries can go after data and information and data theft later on, or perhaps sell on that backdoor to another organization for their own criminal intent. So there's an interesting shift there. And the other thing that really catches my eye when I look at the data is industry. So historically and for a long time, the financial services sector was the top target, no doubt. But in the last couple of years, and certainly last year, it was actually overtaken, only just, but overtaken by manufacturing. So the manufacturing industry was the top attacked industry globally at 25% of all attacks were against manufacturers. That's been a little shift probably during the COVID era. So it is shifting, it is evolving.
I don't want to deviate too far away from the questions, but why manufacturing? Why is that taken over?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Back to extortion, service disruption, supply chains. I think, the financial services sector invest a huge amount in protecting themselves, protecting, detecting, responding. They are relatively mature. They're highly regulated. So they have strong policies and business controls and a lot of technology to catch the bad guys. I think it's a maturity thing, Sina, if I'm honest. I think manufacturers, if you look at it as an industry, not as mature, not as strong processes, sophisticated supply chains. And we've seen supply chain attacks rise in prominence in the last 2 years. I think that's where the low-hanging fruit is for now. It will undoubtedly shift again as those organizations strengthen what they do, build their defenses. It's going to shift again. But I think that's what's behind it, just maturity.
Makes sense. And I want to talk to you about attack surface management, which I've never heard of before. So ASM for sure. And again, it's new to me. I know it'll be new to a lot of people listening. So what is it essentially?
Yeah, again, great question. So ASM, yes, quite a new term, but in very simple terms, think about taking an outside in view of an organization. So attack surface management is simply, how does your organization look to the attackers as you expose interfaces to the internet, as you expose web pages, APIs, all of your web properties, if you like, to the internet? How does that look to an attacker? Where are the weaknesses in that, and probing that? So it's that outside in, looking at every single web page, every single URL. Maybe there's an API that's used by a supplier to supply information or interact with you. How well protected is that? And it's about looking at all of that. And if you think of larger and larger, as you go up the scale of organizations, if you think about global organization and global brands, which have many franchises, many sub brands, maybe sub businesses, all of which have their own branding and websites and so on, maybe through mergers and acquisitions as a company's grown, how well protected are all of those things? Where are the vulnerabilities to be found? And the interesting thing is, you look at the attack surface, that outside surface. Now, many organizations do penetration testing or various testing at the simplistic level, but it tends to be quite static. This is really about a more continuous approach, and thinking about not every vulnerability is equally exploitable, if that makes sense, right? Some things, yes, they're technically vulnerabilities, but they're not actually that easy to exploit. You need a lot of sophistication, whereas others are very easy. And what this approach and technologies do is provide, essentially a temptation score. They tell you, your back door of your house is swinging wide open. Did you know about this? You have this unpatched system with this well-known vulnerability that is frequently exploited by cyber criminals. You need to go patch that. So it's different from just giving you a long list of vulnerabilities. It really helps. This approach really helps to prioritize and focus on the things that need attention.
Very well explained. Yeah, I completely understand that now. But I guess, like, for businesses listening to this, I guess, what are the most effective approaches when they are looking at ASM?
If you look at what organizations do today, and I alluded to it just now, some more mature organizations will test their web properties. They will engage with some sort of ethical hacking company, a penetration testing organization, and they'll go and poke and prod and try and get a report on what those vulnerabilities are. And that's often done on an annual basis. Some organizations might do it quarterly, but that's pretty rare. So it's done occasionally, and you get a snapshot, you get a sense at that period of time. The best practice, if you like, for attack surface management is to do this on a continuous basis, to have a dashboard that is continuously showing you from a business perspective all of those vulnerabilities, categorized from the most urgent, the most tempting, the most urgent, all the way through to the least significant, such that you can prioritize those efforts. Where are you going to put focus on remediating? And I can't emphasize this enough, this notion of going from quarterly, annually to continuously. You can, like many business dashboards, you can wake up in the morning, have a look at the health of the business. Has someone reconfigured something overnight because there's been some change management, some updates? Has that rippled through and caused an unintended consequence no one would have caught till the next review? And you would see it straight away, and you can get hold of that team and make a change. And I think that's one of the most effective things you can do. I think there are some interesting possibilities for the future. As you think about acquiring a new organization, there's a whole set of diligence that goes into, looking at the company you want to acquire, mostly around financials, but increasingly these days that people are looking at their cyber security readiness, preparedness, robustness. You could use such an approach to assess, what do they look like from the outside? If I go probing their websites, and the interesting thing about effective approaches, these tools that do this are non-invasive. I'm not talking about anything that a cyber criminal couldn't do today and probably are doing. So we're just mimicking them and giving you a real sense of what the cyber criminals see in a non-invasive sense. And actually, we do a lot of this for clients today who are interested in our technology. And one of the things we do is just give them a taste of what we can see. We absolutely ask their permission, because I think that's the ethical thing to do. We don't technically need to. We know we could just go and do it anyway, but we don't do that. We do it ethically, as I say. But it's quite an interesting thing that we do with clients to just give them a sense of, well, this is how it looks from the outside in. And sometimes they're surprised, sometimes they're not so surprised because perhaps they have a sense of it already.
Yeah.
And then we can try and move forward.
That's super interesting. This is an area I hadn't known much about before having this conversation with you, Martin. So really, really opened my eyes. So thank you so much for joining us. And can't wait to meet you at London Tech Week as well. Thank you so much for coming on the conversation. And I'm sure we'll speak very soon. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Looking forward to it.